Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hearst Castle. It's a gorgeous day here today. The air is quite crisp. The wind is blowing in the palm trees. As we look up towards the bell towers, we can see that. My name is Tracy, and I'm an interpretive guide. I'm really happy that everyone's joining me today. It's a beautiful day. Glad you're here. And we are all coming together for a Portscast. They're free, they're live, public webinars for teachers and students and for families across California and the world, hopefully. PORTS is a program for K through 12 students. It stands for Parks Online Resources for Teachers and Students. But these programs are also for anyone who just wants to tune in, who's interested in Hearst Castle. And our topic today is exploring the lives and the deaths of ancient Romans through the artifacts and the art at Hearst Castle. This house is named for the person who lived in it and built it, a man by the name of William Randolph Hearst. He was a famous Californian and newspaper publisher. He hired California's first licensed woman architect, San Francisco-based Julia Morgan, to build this house for him. They started plans in 1919. Construction was started in 1920. And for the next 3 decades, this house would be built and expanded and things added and changed, and it was never finished. William Randolph Hearst passed in 1951, and his family and corporation decided to give this as a gift to the people of California and to California state parks. So for over 60 years, we have been giving in-person tours. Over 10 years, we've been providing virtual programming for teachers and students. And so we've got a lot to offer, and I'm glad you're here with us today. We are experiencing a season with several holidays where cultures honor their ancestors and their family and celebrate the lives of people that came before us. And along with that come traditions and rituals. So I was inspired to take a look at some of the artifacts at Hearst Castle, especially the Roman antiquities, and look into how that culture celebrated the lives of their family members and honored the people that came before them. And I found that we have a lot of works of art that can tell those stories. So let's get started. I'm going to point my camera this way. We're going to take a walk. We'll be spending about 30 minutes together examining different artifacts of ancient Rome. William Randolph Hearst was an art collector. So when the house was donated to state parks, so was much of the art that he had collected and decorated his hilltop home here in San Simeon, California. So this is our first object. So teachers, get together with your students. Folks coming in from home, turn to the person next to you and just make some observations and think about what this could be. And let's look at the obvious clues like the size and the shape. So it's pretty long. It's not very wide. Let's move this camera. Let's take a peek inside. What could it be? Okay, if you said an ancient Roman coffin, ding, 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 you are correct. And this is called a sarcophagus. It dates back nearly 1,800 years. It's carved of marble. It wasn't meant for underground burial. It was meant to be seen. It was meant to be seen and celebrated, and the legacy of the person who was buried in here was meant to be honored. So let's take a closer look. So this is dated back to about 230 AD. And we're going to take a look at the front of the sarcophagus. Who are these people? Who are the sculptures? We're looking at the daughters of Zeus, the 9 muses, and they all represent something from the arts and the sciences. So as we go down the line, we start with the very first one on this side, Polymnia. She holds a scroll, the goddess of hymn and poetry. Next to her, Eurydice has a flute in her hand, the goddess of music. And next we have 2 women that are holding the Greek theatrical masks. Thalia is the goddess of comedy. Melpomene is the goddess of tragedy. Look at that. So we know we can think of the ancient Greek amphitheater and its half circle with its stairs and its seats going upwards. The Greeks and then the Romans as well liked to be entertained. Going down the line to the opposite side, we have Clio, the goddess of history, on the end. Next to her, Urania holds well, I'll get in a little closer, a pointer and a globe. She's the goddess of astronomy. And Terpsichore holds a musical instrument, a stringed instrument. She's the goddess of dance. And these 2 in the center, we have Athena or Minerva. Athena is her Greek name. Minerva would be her Roman name, goddess of wisdom. And next to her is Apollo. Let me bring it over here. Now, the interesting fact about this sarcophagus, which was pointed out by art historians, is that Apollo's head is just a little bit different. We're looking at Apollo right in the center here, the only gentleman on the sarcophagus, on the front at least. And Apollo's head, when the sarcophagus was created, would have been a blank canvas, a blank slate, just smooth marble. And when the sarcophagus was purchased, the features of the deceased would have been added to Apollo's face. Therefore, the deceased would have taken on the qualities and the different aspects of Apollo. Well, who is he? He is the god of light and of reason and truth. And those are great characteristics to have. So the person who chose the sarcophagus, or the family who chose it for them, chose imagery that had a personal connection to the deceased. A personal connection. That's what we're looking at when we're going to look at several sarcophagi. Sarcophagi, that's the plural to sarcophagus. And we're going to see this connection to the deceased and learn about the life of the Roman. There's more to this 3rd century Muse sarcophagus, as it is said. We're going to take a look at the side of it just in a moment. But there is a festival that happens in February that the Romans would celebrate. It's called, and I'm just going to look here so I don't get this incorrect, Parentalia. Parentalia was a several-day festival from February 13th to the 21st. And this was their festival where they celebrated and honored their family members. And it started with private ceremonies in the home for several days. And on the very last day, which had a different name called Feralia, is when they went out into public and went out to the burial place and had their celebration. The public spaces were closed. Public office was closed. No weddings were to be had. And this is when they had their gifts and their offerings and their feast to that family member. Let's take a look at the side of this sarcophagus. There's some interesting things to point out here. A little bit more about the person who was buried here long ago. On the side of the sarcophagus is a Greek story, the Odyssey. So this ancient Roman dipped even farther back in history. Now, ancient Rome starts about the 600s BC, and the whole Roman Empire spans a really long time. And of course, it goes through many changes, and it grows in size and then it shrinks. But it's around for about 1,000 years. And they're inspired. The Romans are inspired by the Greeks. The Romans would conquer the Greeks. They would adopt a lot of their traditions and their gods and goddesses. They would be entertained by their stories. So this is a Greek story on a Roman sarcophagus of Odysseus. He's a Greek hero. He commits epic deeds. This is Odysseus right here. He is known for his courage and his cunning and his intelligence. Odysseus is tied himself to the mast of a ship. Why would he tie himself to a mast of a ship? He did it on purpose because the ship is going past the sirens. The sirens are these mythological, almost monsters, yet beautiful women that would lure the boats and the sailors and the captains to their death. In art, the sirens are oftentimes depicted as bird-type women, though they're not carved on the side of the sarcophagus. We just see Odysseus and his crew. Well, at least one crew member. Well, the crew member has earwax in his ear, and he is rowing very hard. And he put the earwax in so he couldn't hear the beautiful siren song and be led to his death. But Odysseus wants to hear it, so he ties himself up. So why would someone want this story on the side of their sarcophagus? And we have to look at why Odysseus wanted to hear the siren song in the first place if it was so dangerous. He's curious and courageous, and he's putting himself through a trial. This is a challenge for him. It was said that the siren song promised gifts of knowledge and wisdom, wisdom and knowledge of the future. So after they passed the sirens, Odysseus had this wisdom and knowledge, apparently, was able to untie himself. The rowers could take the wax out of their ear. There's also something interesting on the front of the boat. Let's see if we can zoom in. It's a little in shadow, but there's a little bit of red eyelash right down here under the eye. And that red eyelash is really important because that tells us that this sarcophagus had been painted. At least some of it had been. And the red eyelash was able to be studied by people who studied chemistry and art historians. And they used a special piece of equipment for metal analysis and material identification. And it involves some complicated scientific electromagnetic radiation and matter and measurements. But the analysis showed that the red eye, they were able to identify what the red pigment was made out of. And they were able to find out that those elements were known to be used back in the 3rd century on painted objects. And that is how the sarcophagus is dated. The other way was the analysis. This is kind of cool. The analysis of the marble came up with the marble was made out of calcium carbonates, sulfates, and hydroxides. And using that, they were able to trace the marble back to the quarry where the marble came from, all the way back to the Aegean Sea, a beautiful island off the coast of Greece. And they were able to locate where the marble was from. So we have a few more things to see. And I'm gonna share an image with you. We first looked at it at the very beginning, and it was the picture of where teachers can get a hold of us if they need to. It's good. The screen's going to go black for just a moment. But if you want your students to color one of their own muses, we have activities for you where you can go on our website and find Ancient Civilizations Padlet. And in that Under Teacher Resources and Ancient Civilizations Padlet, you will find coloring and activities and crafts, and you could download your own PDF of a muse and have your students color. There's 3 different muses. Okay, and we're making our way. I'm going to give you some time to write any of that information down. There's an example of one of the muses. She is, I believe she's Thalia. So lots of activities for teachers who are studying ancient civilization. This program supports 6th grade curriculum. Okay, I hope I gave everyone enough time. We're back at it. We've got this beautiful view of the ocean. We're gonna head over this way. And we will start talking about what other types of scenes that are on sarcophagi. Sarcophagi, that's the plural of sarcophagus. For my students out there, you can all say that out loud. We're going to find out where you might find sarcophagi in Rome. What other types of scenes? This is one of my favorites. Let's set it up. Oh, okay. What is going on there? Maybe discuss with your classroom. What kind of scene are we looking at? A battle scene. So different scenes on these sarcophagi were battle scenes, Greek mythology, portraiture, abstract designs, biographical scenes, meaning a scene from the life of the deceased. So a very custom made sarcophagus. Sarcophagus were burials for the wealthy. It was a status symbol. It was quite elite. Not everyone could afford being buried in a sarcophagus. Sometimes there were wedding scenes on sarcophagi, or sometimes there was the profession of the deceased. I read about one, I think it was a grave marker or a monument of a baker, and there was something that indicated on there that that was their profession in life. They were a baker. So this battle scene shows another Greek story. We have a Roman sarcophagus with a Greek story once again. And this story is the Greeks versus the Amazons. And the Amazons were these warrior women, bold, skilled on horseback, skilled with a bow and arrow. So we have a Greek with this helmet on and the feathers. We have horseback riders. Let's see. This is a Amazon woman right here. There's a little. This one's pretty old. They're all old, of course, so they have experienced some damage through the years. William Randolph Hearst was purchasing a lot of his artwork through art dealers and art auctions. That's where he's purchasing this. If everyone's wondering, how are there ancient Roman sarcophagi in California at a state park? So we have a battle scene right here. This sarcophagus is from the 2nd century. It's dated back to about 160 AD. And even on the side, we have these winged victorious women on the corners. Their faces are a little eroded, but we've got the wings right here. So you might be wondering, where were these? Where would you see this? What did the cemeteries in ancient Rome look like? The cemeteries and the burial grounds and the tombs were outside of the city. And part of that was sanitary reasons. Poor people were oftentimes buried in mass graves without any markers or monuments to them. People were buried in tombs for families. But if you didn't have a family, you could actually join a burial. What was it called? Like a burial club where you pay dues every month, and you knew that you and your group of people that all combine your money together would be buried in a tomb you would be taken care of in the afterlife. And these tombs and monuments were along the road. So as you're passing in and out of a Roman city, you'd be walking past them, and you would even get to read the stories. And that's part of the celebration and the honoring of the deceased. It was their legacy right there. So you would see a sarcophagus, you might read an inscription, you would see the different scenes that were depicted. And that is how the ancient Romans lived on. That was their legacy. So after someone passed away, there was oftentimes mourning in the private home and honoring in the private home. And then there would be a funeral procession down the road, and it would be full of family. There might even be jugglers and musicians and jesters. Sometimes they even hired professional mourners. Those are people who were paid to go to a funeral and cry and wail and beat their chest. And this procession would go from the house to the tomb. Here we go. I wanted to just stop by this tub-shaped sarcophagus from the 3rd century. It's marble, and it's done in an abstract pattern. So here's another example of how the sarcophagus would be decorated. The abstract pattern is of an S shape. I'll get a little closer. There's even different scenes down here. We got my shadow there, so I'll try to stay out of it. There's scenes of, there's urns, there's the Eros or Erotes, which is what we kind of call Cupid today, but Eros, the god of love. There's some winged creatures down there as well. What do we call a winged lion, my friends? Right about here. What is that mythological name for a winged lion? Anyone? Can anyone get that one? We're going to head over this way. This one's a little bit different. Did you all get griffin? Because we're going to see the griffin one more time. So we're going to the front yard in front of Casa Grande. Well, we call this Hearst Castle today, but this house, its official name is Casa Grande. The big house, it has 115 rooms, and Hearst Castle is actually made up of many different historic buildings, from the main house, Casa Grande, to 3 cottages, 2 pools. There's so much to see here. But what I'm going to take us to right now is not the front of the house, but what's in the front yard. It's right over here. Let's check it out. Here we go. I'm going to turn the camera around, fix my tripod so I can get the best angle in this lighting. Let's see here. Yeah, this lighting is pretty tough to work with, isn't it? So what do you think this could be? If we've been looking at sarcophagus, the sarcophagus, I'm going to see if I could drop my tripod down a little bit. So sorry for all the shaking, but this might help for it to come into focus a little better. If we can get, oh yes, I think, okay, I hope that works for you out there. On my side, it looks pretty good. So as you're thinking about what this could be, it's a monument. I've heard it called a grave marker, a grave monument. I've read that sometimes they hold ashes inside. We'll call this a monument at this point, since it's still mysterious a little bit. And this is dated to 79 AD, and that is the year that the famous Mount Vesuvius, and a tragic event, Mount Vesuvius erupts and covers the town of Pompeii. And when Pompeii was rediscovered, it was the way that the eruption happened and the settling of the ash just froze that city in time. And that tragedy became something that scientists and art historians study today. It's a window into ancient Roman world. And the sarcophagi and the grave monument and these artifacts that we're looking at are also really important for art historians and scientists, people who study the past, to understand who these ancient Romans were. So they're an important relic of the past. So this monument has an inscription in the center here. And it says that it's very faint, but it says it's from a son to his father. It's honoring his father. And it even says the emperor of the time, Titus Flavius, I think his name is, and that gives us a date for when this was from. It's got, well, what do you think this could be symbolize? There's all these different, this imagery that symbolizes different things. We've got the eagle. The eagle was a symbol of Rome. We see the eagle throughout. Different nations use the eagle as their symbol. It's a powerful symbol. We've got a garland that is connected to the horns of rams. Rams were oftentimes used in sacrificial rituals in the time of the Greeks. So the rams could possibly mean this idea of rebirth. The garlands represent honoring and even celebration. Are there any holidays where you hang garlands up to celebrate? Streamers, garlands, that sort of thing. It's a celebratory item. They did call them festoons as well. You can call them a festoon. But here is our, oh yeah, there we go. Here is our griffin on the side as well. A mythological creature, half lion, half eagle, very intelligent and bold and courageous. So you have the symbolism there. We have just a few more to look at. I hope you're staying with me. I hope you find this interesting. So we're going to head over, we're going to turn it around and walk this way. In the library, on the second floor, there's 155 ancient Greek and Etruscan vases. We oftentimes view those if teachers book their on-demand ports programs in their 6th grade. They're studying ancient civilizations. We'll examine the Greeks and even the Egyptians. There's Greek and Egyptian artifacts here at Hearst Castle in the collection. Okay, we're gonna set up right here for a moment. Let me fix my tripod legs since I shortened them earlier. Sorry for the shaking. This sarcophagus, also another kind of tub-shaped sarcophagus, like the Strigil one, the one with the abstract design. This one's kind of complicated because when William Randolph Hearst purchased it, it was sold to him as being ancient Roman sarcophagus. But we talk about our art historians studying history. Well, art historians identified some elements on the sarcophagus that were never used during ancient Rome, that were something that was added many centuries later. So the thought for this now, I think, is that the sarcophagus may have, the actual structure may have been made during ancient Rome, but it was never finished. And then hundreds and hundreds of years later, artists came and started adding to it. They started adding different figures and elements to the sarcophagus. And that's why it's considered a forgery in a sense. But it is a good description of a typical scene that you might see on an ancient Roman one, and that would be portraiture. But let's look above. So this rectangular monument is not actually part of the sarcophagus below it. It's its own separate piece. But when they were designing the castle back in the early 1900s and where they wanted all their different art objects to go, these got put together. So what we're going to focus on is this grave monument, and it is called a freedman piece. And this was a monument from the 1st century. It's Roman, it's made out of marble, and it commemorates the freedom of people who were originally slaves and that were elevated to Roman citizens. There was upward economic mobility in Rome. There were different classes of people, but people could make money and elevate their status. So these people were former slaves, and this commemorates their freedom, with the wife in the center, the husband on her side, and it's thought to be their son on one side. We're gonna end up, I see that we're at noon right now. I did say the program was 30 minutes, and we're coming to our last spot. So if you can hang with us, then please do so. If not, this is recorded. We'll go on the Hearst Castle YouTube page. All right. Last stop will be the lidded sarcophagus. This came from Turkey, actually. There were, and they called it Anatolia. Anatolia is modern day Turkey, but it's also a Greek name that means lands of the east. Turkey is east of Greece. This is, how old is it? It is 2nd century. Its epitaph says, "Si in steo Maximo," Maximo means the great, lived 20 years and 9 months. So we have their name and how old they were when they passed away. And we see the Eros, the Erotes, the gods of love with their wings. We've got the garlands for celebration. And we have these heads. Let's get a little closer to the head. Drop it down a bit, bring it in. Who could that be? It's thought to be a gorgon. What's a gorgon? Anyone out there know what that mythological creature is? You might know them as Medusa. And gorgons were typically carved on sarcophagi to act as this protective element that warded off evil. I think it's still working today. So we've examined ancient Roman artifacts in the collection here at Hearst Castle. These artifacts, again, like I said, they're important to people who love history, people who like to study the past and understand different cultures. They're important as a window into the cultures of the past. And what's common amongst many cultures throughout the world, throughout time, is the way we honor the people we love and the way we honor the people that came before us. And that's a unifying element of being human. So thank you all for joining me today at Hearst Castle. And thanks for looking at how the ancient Romans celebrated life and honored the people who passed. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for joining me.